Members? Members of council?
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this special meeting for the town of Pelham for our committee of the whole meeting on Monday, October 23rd, 2017 to order. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to getting some feedback from you throughout the evening, so thank you. The first item is adoption of the agenda. So it has been moved by Councillor Kersey that the agenda for the special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. There were some additions to the agenda, as you'll see under addendum items. Number 7, some correspondence that we received sort of right up to the last minute. So they were included, and council will consider them as we get to them under number 7. So thank you. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members of council have any conflicts of interest they need to disclose?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, none, thank you, and I have none. Can that be so noted? So as I mentioned earlier, thank you very much for joining us this evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your opportunity to give some ideas to council about what you'd like to see or not see in the budget for 2018, both the operating, which is sort of, you know, the lights and the heat, and the capital, which is sort of the trucks and the parks and the roads and those kind of things. So we look forward to that feedback. First, I'll invite our treasurer, Teresa Quinlan, to give us a little bit of a presentation on the 2018 budget, and I think she has some information on kind of the lay of the land for where we are in 2017. So thanks, Ms. Quinlan, for. Please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know if it's best probably to stand here. So this is the budget schedule that we have. It was approved by by council a week ago, and what we have here tonight is the public meeting. And as the mayor has mentioned, we look forward to your input into the town's 2018 budget. So we're looking to go to council on Monday, December the 4th, with the operating, the capital, and the water wastewater budgets, and hopefully to get the budget approved by December 18th before the start of the new fiscal year on January the 1st. The Town of Pelham budgets. The town's budget is a financial plan that outlines the money the town will raise and spend in 1 year. And what it does is we align the town's strategic priorities with the services that are delivered daily to the residents. It directs what infrastructure will be purchased, constructed, and repaired. So this is what our budgets do. The operating budget. So the operating levy budget, this pays for the daily business of the town, including the library. And it includes all the programs and services, the staff costs to deliver these programs, supplies, and repayment of debt for major projects. This amount is paid by your property taxes. Operating rate budget, this pays for basic services such as water and wastewater treatment, and the costs for these services are charged to the residents based on usage, and it's not part of your property taxes. And the capital budget is used for long-term investments like infrastructure facilities, and they're paid off over time. And roads, road repairs, machinery are examples of capital projects. Development charges also contribute to the funding of our growth-related capital projects. So a lot of times people ask the questions, where do our property taxes go? And so we did, just thought it'd be helpful just to show you where the money's being spent. So an average assessment value in Pelham for a home is $316,400. And this equates to $4,108 of property taxes, of which the town receives $1,560, the region receives $1,982, and the province, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, receives $566. So when you look at that number, it's not just the town's portion, we also have to pay off the region and the province for education. And so if you look at the percentages of your property taxes, only 38%.
Excuse me, Ms. Quinlan, if you would just get a little closer to the microphone, we want to make sure that we take
Oh, I'm
this
sorry, okay.
You just, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
that's okay. We want to tape it for the audience at home on our YouTube
Okay.
channel, so
Was I too far? No, okay.
we're not sure, but if you would just, the
Okay,
clerk has asked me to make sure that you speak in the
okay,
microphone.
very good.
Thank you,
I just didn't want to have my
No,
shoulders.
thank you.
So if you look at that, so 38% of your property taxes actually is used on behalf of the town, 14% for education, and 48% for the region. So where do the taxes go? We actually broke them down, and based on that $1,500 that we said was the portion pertaining to the town, if you look at this, the largest amount of that goes towards roads, sidewalks, winter control, all the services related to the infrastructure of the roads. And then there's like the fire services, general government, and library. So this is a breakdown of where the town portion of your property taxes go. And then here is the various percentages relating to that. With the region, the biggest portion of the region's expenses that our taxes, that the residents' taxes are paying for, are the police services. That's the biggest portion. The regional roads, another one, community services, and waste management. So those are the largest portions, and public health and emergency medical services. So this is what your taxes are paying for, but the region is actually providing those services. And that's the breakdown of the percentage. And there's the $2,248 out of that average tax assessment that pertains to the services that the region is providing. And the last slide I have here is just to show you that, from 2010 to 2016, the town of Pelham is the second lowest of the cumulative tax increases across the 12 municipalities at 25%, where the averages are at 35%. So just wanted to share that.
Okay, thanks very much for your presentation as a bit of a basis for perhaps committee members to think about, but also members of the public, excuse me, to know a little bit more about the foundation for the 2017 budget. So thank you very much. We do have a registered speaker that would like to present first, and so that's Annie Holtby, spokesperson for the Fonthill Bandshell Concerts, regarding a 2018 budget request. And then following Ms. Holtby, there may be questions from members of council. So if you could maybe answer those if required, and then I'll open it up to members of the public as well. Oh, I'm sorry, the clerk is holding a piece of paper here. We have some business here. It's been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole receive the information in the 2018 budget materials presented by Teresa Quinlan, Treasurer. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
Sorry for my back. Thanks for giving us time tonight, I say us, the royal us, to talk about our request as far as your next budget year is concerned. And I was looking for where it would say parks on the allocation of the taxes, but I guess it comes into that line about wellness, et cetera.
Yes.
And that's very fitting, I think. So we had sent forward to council 4 areas that we wanted to look at. And one was about grading and tiering the park. And of course, we're speaking to the concert area. Now, I have a photo here of, this is your beautiful work. This is looking at what an actual picture would look like with the tiering. Do you want to maybe just grab that? And I guess I just wanted to show this because in the photo, there are several tiers, and what the tiers represent are, how everybody comes and puts their chairs out at 10 or 8 in the morning, and to make sure they've got their seat. Well, with the tiering, we would have enough room to put 2 rows of chairs in each tier, and then it would go up, and then it would go up. And on this diagram, we just wanted to note that we felt the tiering should probably go all the way up to the top of the hill, so that then at the top, the tiering would stop when it's flat. Because one of the things we felt is that it's really a question of safety. A lot of our demographics for concert attendees You know, a lot of us are over 60. And so there's a lot of concern about stability, because I know sometimes we try and herd people and they say, oh, I don't really want to go over there. I don't feel, you know, I don't feel comfortable with it. And so that's one reason that we thought the tiering would make a big difference, allow us to get the numbers in there, because they seem to, well, they rise and fall, but we get very good turnouts. So we thought the tiering would be, you know, a wonderful thing to do. And, you know, even if it went first to do some grading, because there are areas there that really are quite tricky. And I know collecting money too is sometimes very interesting, especially around where the pine cones can be, right? You have to watch everything there. Yeah, so basically we haven't had any accidents that could possibly happen, but we're always on the lookout for it, you know. So also the accessible aisleways, like David Swan, who is our go-to guy for the day of, often will chalk out areas for, I think I've lost it there, we'll chalk out guidance for people to access the different rows, et cetera. It's a good start, but it usually ends up being a bit of a labyrinth later. So that's our main focus there, and basically safety, from what we've seen, is the most motivating factor. The other one would be permanent washrooms. Like right now, the porta potties certainly do their job, but you know, to have something there that'd be permanent for year round, not just for that night, and mainly it would be for handicapped accessible, wheelchair accessible. And so, you know, and anybody there that's there at all other times, of course, would have access to it. The street closing, the last number of concerts, we've closed off or you have closed off the streets between the post office driveway and the old LCB driveway, and that's worked really well for people that really want to dance. You know, someone had brought up, well, maybe you could use that for seating too, but of course that would be a dangerous thing, because if somebody needed access to the road, it's easy to clear dancers, but not so much the chairs. And I don't think they'd want to see them sitting there at 8 o'clock in the morning either on the road. So, but we certainly did appreciate that it did close and people did enjoy it, so that was a great thing. Lighting. We have had Brian Balchus, he's an electrician, and you know, he was able to set up a few things, but we'd really like to see, especially in the latter part of the season, where it's dark when the concert's over. So again, a little safety thing there to, you know, lights would come on at that point to allow people easy access out of it. So we feel a lot of it is access and safety, and I don't know who did these drawings for you, but it certainly is a beautiful concept, and we encourage, you know, its fulfillment at some time. So those are the areas that we just wanted to bring for your consideration when you're looking at your budget around the park this year. Did you have any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do members of council have any questions for Ms. Holtby, Councillor King, and then Councillor Rubiak?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. When you're talking about the tiering, are you talking of an amphitheater type of grading with concrete, or?
No, it would be grass.
Yes.
And then the actual step up would be, yes, it would be concrete, that part, yeah. So the separation of the tiers would be something solid, but there would be breaks in it for also some traffic to go through, and then the major center aisle. Okay, and also, thank you for asking that. In this rendition, there's a broader area in front of the stage, but we thought probably you could have a couple of rows in front of the actual grass as well that is already there.
If I may, Mr.
Please.
Mayor, I have one more question. Do you see that type of grading making a difference to the capacity of the attendees?
I do, because right now, people tend to stay away from certain areas because it is quite steep. And so I think, well, definitely the grading, and I think the tiering would allow for more access, especially if it's designed so that, as this photo shows, that you could have 2 rows in each level. I think that would add a lot. It'll be a lot more coherent a group than the sprawl. I mean, there'd still be, people sitting on the sides and at the back, right? But the tiering would allow for a natural progression from the tiering beyond it too. So I just think it would be better use of the park area if we could have
Okay.
more of it would be used,
Okay,
definitely.
thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I recall we had a discussion a year, 2 years ago with regard to changes to Peace Park, and it was quite a good discussion and included, I think, this diagram. And we're going to have that discussion again, obviously, because you brought this forward. But I'm interested in knowing this. The association, is it contemplating participating in the costs associated with this project at all? Or is it your expectation that the town budget would cover the whole thing? Are you planning a capital program, for example, a funding program of some kind?
Not that I'm aware
Not that you're aware of.
of. No.
Okay. That was my question.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, I just have a question, and I guess it is about the tiering. I think when the concept was here and we had a representative from the band shell involved in that.
I think that was David and Brian, I believe.
That's correct, yeah, a couple of members. It wasn't clear to me at that point whether the band shell committee had said, yes, indeed, we want to do the tiering. So I guess what you're saying tonight is, yes, the band shell committee is, whether you've had a vote or you've come to a realization that, or a motion or something like that to say, we do want the tiering to happen, not just, because a couple of years ago it was, they called it bowling it out and those kind of things. So this is kind of.
Well, I think there were 2 aspects, Peace Park grading and tiering. So I think the idea was that the tiering is the sort of the end goal.
Right.
But
Okay.
if it could be graded initially, then that actually would make things safer as well.
Right, thank you. We did, a couple of years ago, bowl it, I guess, for lack of a better word, but there's obviously still some issues in there. So I just
There's
wanted to
still some
clarify
spaces for sure.
that, and it is here as the, correspondence we received from the chairperson, that, so that's good to know. I think, for me, it wasn't clear that that's exactly what the band shell was hoping for. So I appreciate you coming forward and recommending that and the other items. So
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
thank you. This will be something that council will, and staff will have to consider as we look forward to our capital budget. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Van Ravensway, for helping Ms. Holtby. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Kersey that Committee of the Whole receive and refer to staff the correspondence from the Fonthill Bandshell Concert Committee outlining their 2018 budget request to be included in the 2018 budget for consideration by council. Any further discussion on that? Okay, so we look forward to that coming forward and seeing where that comes in the budget. I think part of the plan as well is whether, is it something that one does all at once, or is it something that one kind of stages? Can you do the grading and tiering one year and then the permanent washroom the next year, sort of thing? So, something to look at, no doubt, as we hear back from staff with their recommendations. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. And now we open it up to members of the public, members representing other groups, to please come forward. And just so that we have them for the record, if you can state your name and address. Is that what we're looking for, Madam Clerk? Name and address for the record.
At least the street, it doesn't have to be.
At least the
house
street.
number.
You don't have to tell us exactly which house it is on Canberra Road or whatever. Um,
These at the end.
And then let us know what your thoughts are. So please come forward, Mr. Abbott, if you would like to do so first.
I was going to suggest age before beauty has probably allowed me the first one up. Mr. Mayor, councillors, you've seen me before. The story is much the same, but I do have one or two components that I'd like to
and it's-
bring up. Can you hear me?
Yes, but in
Yeah.
your street.
The street is Pickwick Place.
Yes,
This.
for the record.
This is principally about the median of Pickwick Place. And first and foremost, the lights, the proposed lights for installation first in 2017, postponed, and now I understand possibly 2018. But to a lesser extent, it's also about the upgrading of the median itself, the trees, and the shrubbery. But certainly, the lights are the principal issue. Now, most of you have been aware of this issue, so I'm going to be brief. I'm not going to drag you through all of the details, and there are quite a number because we've been discussing this since really late 2016 and through this year as well. We've been working, discussed and communicated with the mayor, with Councillor Kersey, with staff. We've covered, I think, the ground, and I hope we made our point. First, let me deal with the lights. Pickwick Place is rather a charming, we think, cul-de-sac. The traffic is extremely low. We have a road of 18 feet on each side of the median. There are 6 lights that are in place. They're rather charming. They're 11 feet high, and they provide low emission light, certainly adequate for the street. The residents enjoy the street and enjoy the lights. I think that's an important point to recognize. The residents of the street are not looking for change. What we have now, we feel, is perfectly adequate. Proposal was made in 2016 to replace the existing lights, based largely, we understand, on the supposition that the electricity would be reduced as there would be lights installed. We worked with staff early on and approved the design of the light standard and design of the pole. And as we progressed, we were alarmed that what was being proposed in height was 25 feet. Remember that the current height is 11. And the basis for that, we understand, is that staff felt that a traffic standard had to be adhered to, and that would mean at a minimum 25 feet, rather than a pedestrian standard, where we could move ahead with something between 12 and 16. Really, we looked at this and we said, my God, isn't this unnecessary? We thought, well, it'd be extremely intrusive. These are going to be large highlights looking down on all the houses, of which there are 10 on the street. It's pretty small. And would certainly change the ambience of the street. There would be no question about that. I might describe the lights just briefly. They're rather unique. As I said, they're 11 feet high. They're framed with, there's the pole inside, but they're framed with this wooden framework. And in itself, it sort of adds to the country feel because every one of those frameworks is just laced with woodpecker holes. And if we did repair them, I'm not sure where the woodpeckers would go, but that's a secondary issue. Now, town engineering informed me in 2017, I was dealing with the supervisor of engineering at the time, that the proposed light installation and the shrubbery upgrading would cost in the order of $130,000. Frankly, I find that estimate absolutely astounding. I don't see how we could work up to $130,000. However, I have a suggestion. If the town is moving ahead with the light installation, and there's no question that the height is a very significant issue. I can't overstate that. I mean, we're very, very concerned about that. However, if the town decided that might not be in the 2018 budget, then going the way of the status quo, leaving the lights as they were at 11 feet, replacing the woodpecker problem with the framing, and then some modicum of tree replacement. There were 2 taken down early this year, and a little bit of upgrading on the shrubbery, and we would have an installation which would certainly satisfy the residents of the street and might do a good deal to the 2018 budget. I know you're used to having people ask for money. I'm suggesting here that you have an opportunity to actually reduce your budget requirement. So, Mr. Mayor and councillors, I really think it's time for a decision. This has been going on for 3 years. I hope that we can come to an accommodation that would be good for the residents of the street and also for the town and its economic interests. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbott. Questions? Councilor Ribbiak?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, as always articulate and to the point. But I'm not sure I caught your point with regard to the LED lighting. Are you concerned about LED lighting on a 25-foot pole, or are you concerned about LED lighting even on an 11-foot pole?
Any lighting 25 feet. You call it and we'll be satisfied with that. 25 feet is just out of the question.
So it's not an issue of the LED lighting?
No,
It's,
no, it
okay,
isn't.
thank you. That was my...
In fact, if I can just respond to that, there are some who are looking at this, and I'm not sure they're lighting experts, but the first question is, well, why not just replace the light bulb in the 11-foot height existing standard? And I'm not sure technically whether that can be done efficiently or not.
Don't know either. I just wanted to know what the concern was.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
others? Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Abbott, thank you for your presentation. You and I have chatted a number of times about this. Could you also inform council what the residents had agreed to do? Should we go ahead and improve the median with respect to maintenance? That might be
I'd be
enlightening.
glad to. This was sort of this was a bargaining chip in a way, but something that has been done in the past, and that is that the residents of the street actually maintained the median for a while. I understand this was before my time, and the issue came up again, and I think it was brought up by you, Councillor. And would we, if the town had went ahead with the upgrading of the tree replacements and the upgrading of the shrubbery, would we, as the residents, be prepared to continue its maintenance? And the answer was yes. But there is a condition that if we ran into trouble, because none of us are arborists, that we could call on the town for expert support. And that from time to time, if we needed to trim trees or shrubbery, that could be done as well. Certainly, though, from the day-to-day maintenance, or let me say month to month, I hope it's not too onerous, we could bring that median into good shape, and we would be prepared to do that on a voluntary basis, no cost.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Kersey, he has another question, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it appropriate to ask staff a question at this point? Or we wait till the motion's on, or wait till a report comes forward, or how do we want to play
I
that?
think we can ask staff a question, because some members who might be here might might leave, and so they want to hear the response. So I think it's okay. We'll see if the director's prepared for a question.
Well, my question's fairly simple. This issue has come before this council a couple of times with respect to the height. And so I'm wondering, what steps would council have to take to override the 25-foot height and direct staff to either leave the light standards as they are and replace the electrics in them, the bulbs, or replace the existing lights with more pedestrian scale lighting that the residents seem to be quite happy with and that the street has functioned very well with for the past 30-plus years?
Madam Director, are you able to answer that question?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. That was actually the final direction of this matter when it last came to council. The last direction that we gave to the lighting designer was to go back to the drawing board to acknowledge that this isn't for roadway illumination, just for pedestrian, and to consider minimizing that pole height. And then with that design, once brought back and approved here, it would be with the acknowledgement from council that it doesn't, it's not designed for roadway illumination, only for cosmetic purposes, as long as we could acknowledge that. So that's where it was left with the designer, and we haven't brought back that revised design since that time.
Okay, thank
I
you.
assume that's forthcoming then at some point?
Do you have an idea of timing, Madam Director? The councilor's assuming it's going to come forward at some point, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the budget for construction wasn't allowed to be deferred to 2017, so the remaining design budget was minimal, if any. So when we did go back to them, that was renewed or discussed with the manager of engineering. And I'm not certain of the status at this point. I know there was a discussion to see what we could wrap up, so those designs are at least sitting on a shelf, but I haven't seen those come back at this time.
Okay, thank you. So just for clarity, it was in the 2016 budget, not in the 2017 budget, but it wasn't deferred to 17, it was just kind of held in abeyance? Is that what you're suggesting on the capital dollars?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, the original budget was for design and construction. Once we got to the construction estimate from the designer, which was the construction estimate that Mr. Abbott referred to, that's where we came back to council and said what's on the table is very different than what's been budgeted. So at that point in our budget discussions last year, we discussed deferring that remainder of the construction portion and adjusting the budget for construction accordingly for 2017 to include the full amount. But unfortunately, that didn't go through in 2017, and it's currently in the forecast a little bit further, but we can make those adjustments based on tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarity. Councillor?
Just as a follow-up comment, so that if it does come forward in 2018, perhaps we could incorporate some of the suggestions that Mr. Abbott has brought forward, not only with respect to the pedestrian scale lighting, but downsizing the degree of landscaping that we do there, and maybe even looking at not replacing the lights, but just replacing the electrics or the bulbs or whatever. I don't know whether we can simplify the whole matter. So leave it at that, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
and we'll
I
look
think
forward to
so.
whatever comes forward.
Thank you very much. So it sounds like it's still a work in progress, and we're going to keep trying to figure out how we can fit it in the budget with what you're asking at this point. So,
Well, thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
for your
And
time.
we do have a letter that you've provided, and we'll receive that later on.
Yes, it's just a more fuller explanation of what I've tried to keep as a brief one here.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to present to council? Okay. Mr. Tucker?
Hi there, my name is David Tucker, and I work at Tucker Homes, which is on Weber Road. in Pelham, because I don't actually reside in Pelham. And I'm also a member and president of the Pelham Business Association. And basically, what I would like to see is if the town could work further on its economic development plan. As I understand, in looking at the 2017 budget, it was listed 7th down the line on a list of priorities, and that priority was basically to write down the economic development plan. And maybe there is one in process, or maybe it's not, I don't know. But basically, with the development plan, I'd like to see a specific focus on economic incentives for small businesses within the town. And these could be in the form of multiple programs. They don't necessarily have to be financial incentives. A couple examples that do exist already in neighboring municipalities are items like a tax increment program that essentially defers tax increases to later years, which of course I think Town of Pelham has programs like this with the community improvement grant system, but that's only set up in one particular area in the downtown. It doesn't necessarily apply to all businesses within the town. There's also the development charge reduction program or the planning fee reduction program. These are, again, a couple more examples that exist outside of the town. Or another item could be declaring economic development zones or strategic investment zones that could actually have reduced red tape or a streamlined regulation process for expedited approvals, something that would minimize the amount of reporting and studying and planning that would need to go in for small businesses to grow. And you could even provide some form of grant or CIP type funding to these zones that you decide. And the town of Pelham, the big reason I bring this up is that the town of Pelham is bigger than just the CIP zone area, which is, I think, is primarily focused in the downtown core. And you can correct me when I'm done on that or not. But you know, we have a very large agricultural base with a lot of farming in our community. We have the Fenwick downtown core. We have a light industrial center, or I guess core, focused on Weber Road, which is near our business. And you know, you have businesses along Highway 20 as well going outside the town. And you know, those are just a particular areas in mind for me, that first ones that come to mind of potential zones that could be, that do have some businesses, small to medium, that could positively impact from this type of grant or financial incentives. And you know, I know that when you hear financial incentives, there's a little bit of a concern sometimes with municipal governments handing out money to businesses, whether they be small, medium, or large. Particularly when you look at some neighboring communities that hand out very large grants in terms of tax increment and development charge reduction, and you know, some that we don't even all know about, to very large corporations to bring their business in. One example would be GE in Welland. And I understand that there would be a large amount of risk for the town in trying to seek large corporations to plant themselves in the community from a financial standpoint, as well as, you know, uprooting in the community, because we don't have a lot of large-scale employers. But by focusing the financial incentives and these development charge reductions and any one of these programs on small to medium-sized businesses, you keep the financial commitments low. You can let it focus on your program directives. So that would be, you know, smart growth implementation, you know, projects that are fitting with your idea of a good economic and environmental project. And you know, the small business financial incentives are, well, the opposite of the large one. They're smaller risk. They're essentially small bets on small growth, and some work and some don't, but the idea is that they don't come at a large loss to municipalities. They work in many different municipalities and states across Canada and US. There's a lot of different examples. And it's something that I think the town should consider in implementing in an economic development plan. I guess that's about all I had.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker, for your presentation. There may be questions from members of council. Before we do start the questions, there are two CIP zones, community improvement
Okay.
plan areas, one in downtown Fonthill and one in downtown Fenwick.
Okay,
There has been an uptake, I think about 13 properties in downtown Fonthill that have used the program. And I don't think there's been any in downtown Fenwick that have used the program, so maybe that's why you didn't know that it was in that area as well. So
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify that. Councillor Kersey was quite involved prior to coming on council in that program, but it was one that was embraced by all of council. Okay, so did I have Councillor Rivak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just for clarification, thank you for your presentation. Just for clarity, you were discussing a number of initiatives that the town might take. You said not necessarily financial, but as it turns out, most of them were. Break it down for me, if you would. Which ones of these would be designed to help attract businesses, and which ones would be around retaining current businesses, and how would current businesses be able to take advantage of what we have to offer? Just, I can make some assumptions, but I'd rather hear your thoughts.
well, ultimately, it being a plan decided upon by the town, I mean, you could decide however you want to use it. You could make a plan like this be implemented only towards existing businesses if you wanted, which wouldn't necessarily be the most business-friendly climate. But you could decide that if you do create a program like this, that a certain percentage, say like 80% is directed towards existing businesses and 20% is directed towards new business. The big thing, I don't have the answer, in terms of how exactly it's done, because I don't work in municipal government and I don't know how they do it. All I have are some of the examples that I have seen and read about, and I just wanted to present them to the table as something for the town to consider, particularly knowing that an economic development plan is on the radar in the future, and something to think about when developing that plan. So that's about the best I can offer you at this time. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may just follow up. So what I'm not hearing, I guess, is how you see your suggestion being directed at a specific problem that you have detected, or a condition that you feel we need to address. Again, I think I can assume, but I'd rather hear your views.
Okay, and
Mr. Tucker?
a specific example would be coming from my direct line of work, working for a builder. And that would be, we've done multiple projects for commercial businesses, many of them small businesses, that we're undertaking just expansion projects, doing additions or conversions of existing buildings. And, they have to go through a fairly lengthy process in terms of site plan amendments or, brand new site plans, paying fairly large development charges for using an existing space. And I understand what development charges are used for, and everything has a purpose. But when you have an existing numbered address receiving service already, some of the development charges just seem excessive. And to the business owners themselves, it usually comes as a bit of a surprise. So maybe another potential, program or something that could be offered is sort of streamlining the process for a small business that says, here's the steps that you take, and here's what you incur when you embark on this process of, let's say, constructing a new building on your property, which will in turn lead to growth. And I understand that technically the planning department is supposed to do that, but just from my experience with our clients, they have a bit of a rough time with it, or just, it's not always very clear to them. And sometimes things catch them off guard. And like another great example, like I said, was a building conversion. So taking an existing building, and working within its confines and converting it from an agricultural building into an office building that, was only slightly increasing occupancy, and they have fairly large development charges to pay on that project, and it seems unreasonable when there's not any footprint being added to the entire property, and very minimal services being directed towards that property if you think about the uptick in terms of what's being done there, and services from the town and the region. So that would be a specific example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, and it's an example that I that I have a great deal of sympathy for. You're right, both seemingly excessive and a surprise.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you saying is programs that are directed at assisting existing businesses to grow and therefore, of course, expand and increase their footprint, increase their employment, and just general business. That this is kind of the area in which you would want us to look at.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That helps me a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much a question, just a comment. What we're talking about here might, rather than be directed at the budget, be directed at the development charge study that we're just undertaking in terms of how we could incorporate those types of incentives with reference to the development charge within the confines of the development charges bylaw. With respect to granting in other ways, as we all know, we're pretty restricted by the Municipal Act. Unless we develop a specific zone, such as a CIP, we just can't go holus bolus start handing out grants. But one of the things that we have talked about, not necessarily officially, but at some of our get-togethers, is developing areas where we might, as a town, undertake some of the preliminary studies, such as an archaeological, drainage, all of those sort of things for a specific area, and develop a package such that if a new business were to come into town or an existing business wanted to expand, they would not necessarily have to drop the money on those studies. And the hit might not be so heavy, or might not feel so heavy when it comes to paying for development charges and planning charges, because all of those studies would have been undertaken by us as a community. So that might be something that we could look at in terms of budgeting. I'm just trying to flesh out what Mr. Tucker has said here within the confines of the Municipal Act. That would reduce red tape. It would present a package to either an existing business or a potential new business. I think of Weber Road in particular, as we're very light on our light industrial tax base. That might be an area that we could designate as a zone and try and undertake some of these studies to attract new businesses or have old businesses relocate into that area and hence strengthen our light industrial base. So I think they're very good suggestions here. I just think we need to sort of route it in a little bit different way.
Okay, thank you. I think, Mr. Tucker, to council colleagues and to everyone, you said it well. I don't know how to do it, that's our job, but this is what kind of the vision is. So, but I think Councillor Kersey, you've sort of sorted it into the different buckets that we have that can follow. So I appreciate that. I was going to say, if I might just speak for a moment, that we are redoing the development charge bylaw. The region seems perpetually redoing its development charge bylaw, and because there's some opposition to how it was approved in the summer. One of the things that we did look for there was elimination of development charges for industrial development. Instead, it's a zero fee. You pay the fee and then you get it back, sort of thing. And this council could look at that as an option if we wanted to. You mentioned the GE. That designation is in something called the gateway zone. Traditionally, or I guess those gateway zones are in urban areas, so they have water and sewer. But there could be consideration to expand those zones into dry areas, as they call them, dry industrial areas, like the area that you're in. So that's something that this council could work on. But that's on the planning side.
That's on the planning side.
Also from the planning side, and I just had the conversation with the Smart and Agri Steering Committee. It's an interesting concept. Mr. Tucker spoke about smart growth. And often the smart growth, those areas like our downtowns that want to grow have to go through certain things. They have to do archaeological, traffic studies, drainage studies, etc. And Yet some of the greenfield developments, like what's going on in East Font Hill, those things have been done as a collective. So when a business is saying, well, should I go in the downtown? What do you have to do? Well, I have to do all these studies. Or go in the greenfield, well, all these studies are already done. So the certainty is there. So there could be a potential for secondary plans in certain areas that would help with that and sort of lighten the red tape, make it pink, as it were. So I think you've given us a lot of things to think about that maybe this council will need to discuss with staff. So I certainly appreciate that. Councillor Durley, did you have something?
No, not at all.
to add? Okay, thank you. So sorry to go on, it just causes a lot of ideas to come forward, so I appreciate that, and looks like we'll have to, continue to have the discussion. So thank you for initiating that discussion.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker, for your presentation. Who's next?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just one more comment with regard to the
Sure.
last presentation before we move on. Don't want to lose where Mr. Tucker began, which is about the economic development plan.
Right.
That was an effort that had gone on for several years. I know it has fits and starts, but at the moment, I guess it's fitted and not started. Perhaps we can
Okay.
start it up again.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and taxpayers. My name is Nancy Brzezowski. I live on Canberra Road on the hill. I am very not prepared compared to everybody else, but I did have an idea. I'm a relatively new mom with a 17-month-old son and who's back to work. However, my time off raising my little one, I enjoyed time outside at our local parks and thought it was great that I could meet up with other moms and even a lot of grandparents that were watching their grandchildren. But the one thing that we don't have in the town of Pelham and Font Hill is a splash pad. And the one thing that we would do regularly is do a caravan to another township to use their splash pads. And my property is unique. It touches 8 other properties, and within the past 2 years, I've had at least 2 families with children that have moved in. So it is a growing community. I know that there's quite a bit of diversity in Pelham and Font Hill in terms of needs for the residents. But it would be wonderful to see a splash pad. I've reached out to the city of St. Catharines. They are proposing a splash pad in Port Weller. It is a site that already has some amenities, but they're proposing about $400,000 for the installation of that splash pad. It would be wonderful if we could set a gold standard, though. The splash pad in Caledonia is a beautiful splash pad where it has something for little ones, such as my fellow, and then older children, whereas not a lot of splash pads have that opportunity for little guys to play safely, and then older kids who like to splash and have things, jets squirting at them and whatnot. So that's something to consider if we were to do a splash pad, that if we could maybe set the gold standard and have something that would appeal to both little children as well as older children who enjoy to get out and enjoy the water. I'm not exactly sure. I would be willing to put forth a petition. I know lots of moms. Social media is a great thing as well. I'd be willing to do any work to help put forth this idea. I'm not too sure about picking out a site in terms of where we could have a splash pad in the Pelham, Fenwick, Font Hill area. But I'd be more than happy to help out with any legwork that might be needed. And I know there are lots of moms that are very interested in this idea that couldn't attend tonight, but it has been discussed a lot.
That's great. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay.
Do members of council have any questions? It was very comprehensive, and I certainly appreciate your offer to assist. So thank you for that. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very good presentation and a very good idea. It was discussed that all 4 charrettes dealing with the existing Hay Street, the old arena property, and that is one of the suggestions that was brought forth, and certainly it is on the radar screen, so, you know, we are fully aware of the benefits that one of these things would have, so thank you for bringing that forward.
Yeah, in doing a bit of research, I was able to see that that document. I was really hoping there'd be some stronger numbers for the splash pad, but it is what it is, so.
Okay, thank you. Others? Thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate it, and again, appreciate the offer to help out. Thank you. And thanks for coming tonight. You know, we have these meetings at 6:30. It's not often easy for folks with young children to attend, so thank you for that. Ms. Wells.
First, I'm not expecting this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Melissa Wells, Kevin Drive is where I live. I am here representing Pelham Minor Baseball today. So a little bit of an overview. Pelham Minor Baseball provides organized youth baseball to residents of Pelham and the surrounding communities for both boys and girls, ages 4 through 18. Our teams provide children the opportunity to take part in healthy competition, learn about teamwork, build friendship, and engage in much-needed exercise. In 2017, PMBA has seen an unexpected growth of 36% over the previous year, and that was 258 children we saw registered this year from T-ball to midget. So with the residential development going on in Fonthill, we fully expect that those kind of increased numbers will be seen over the next few years for sure. PMBA offers local league programs, but as well they offer rep travel teams at 3 different divisions. So this means that our teams are traveling to other areas of Niagara as well as Southern Ontario, but we're also bringing in others to our area from Niagara Falls and all over. And it should be noted that we have now hosted 2 years in a row a Pee Wee Rep tournament that brought in 8 teams from Toronto, Barrie, Waterdown, all kinds of different areas for the weekend here. Staying in local hotels, eating in local restaurants, all that sort of a thing. Most importantly, why we wanted to address council at this budgetary consideration meeting is that we have been asked by Niagara District Baseball for the last 2 years to host the AA Bantam minor team. This team is encompassed by athletes, top athletes from all over Niagara, not just Pelham athletes, and it plays in a loop that includes Toronto, Georgetown, Oakville, Hamilton, all that area, and they come weekly for games here. It's not just a tournament type schedule, it's a weekly thing. So again, those are out-of-town teams that are constantly coming, and they have to eat somewhere, and they might be shopping at some of the local specialty shops and any kind of our visitor-focused businesses. To this point, we have had to say no because Harold Black is just not equipped at this time to be able to host those out-of-town teams that need to play a little bit later in the day. Think about it, you're driving from Toronto. You can't play a 6 o'clock game, you have to play later. To do that, we need lights. So specifically what we're suggesting is that the lights at Harold Black Park that were discussed last year be prioritized as one of the issues that we've identified as being very important to our organization. And as well, the closed dugouts. Right now, the Harold Black dugouts are completely open. So just for the players' safety, they need to be enclosed, so you're not getting balls and stuff flying all around. It also just makes us look better. Right now, it doesn't look as nice as it could if you go to some of the other diamonds that are played in the loop. Even Welland's diamonds, even though they're older, they have those facilities and they just look much better, much more professional. In addition to that would be obviously the largest, most important budgetary expectation or consideration that we would ask for. There's a few other ones that would include finishing the bullpens at C3, fixing the third base fencing as balls go underneath the fence. Netting over C2 would enable us to actually use that field. Right now, a baseball costs about $6 per ball, and we played one tournament game there and we lost 10 balls in that game. So that's pretty easy numbers, $60 lost in one game because there's no net, so the balls go right over into the sheep pen on the far side. We can't get them. Also, the C3 infield needs a little bit of work. It's been a couple of years since it was constructed, so all the dirt is now settled. And we have a pretty major puddle around shortstop that we've actually had to use couch cushions to make it usable before a game. So just some like maintenance type stuff is required there. Weeds, things like that have kind of taken place there, and it causes really weird bounces for the kids. So yeah, Pelham Miners Baseball has really appreciated working with council and town staff in the last year. It's gone really, really smoothly, and for that we're very thankful. And we just like to consider or have these considered and see that relationship continue.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wells, for your presentation. On behalf of Pelham Baseball, Pelham Minor Baseball, questions for Ms. Wells? We do have an item of correspondence here, which is wonderful. Anything further? Okay, Councilor Rybak?
It's really a question of the process, I guess. So an idea like this will come back to us fleshed out with costs and that sort of thing for the budget consideration later on, right?
Yes.
So the questions I would have loved to have asked would have been around costs and things like that, but that information will come in the process, and we'll have a chance to discuss it at that point. But
Yes,
the
this is
presentation was very
actually-
clear and very well made. Thank you.
This is actually not the first time it's been addressed. I believe that these items were on slate for this year. We just want to assist in being clear on what the priority level is. I believe this was the priority level as of last year, but we just want to come back to you and say we have been asked again by the district team to take it again. So we very much support the kind of itemized list that has already been created. And the coach for the team that has taken the team is actually a Pelham coach this year, and we have 3 Pelham boys that have made the team. So it'd be a nice year to have
Every
that
little
done.
bit helps.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, and we'll receive your letter. Anyone else wanting to make a presentation? I think we got everybody. I thought you were signaling there, Mr. Piccolo. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your presentations. We do have some correspondence, and then we'll open it up for council discussion. And no doubt Councillor Durley would have thought that perhaps we should have had that earlier discussion during the time when we have later for committee discussion, so I apologize to the council for that. We do have some items of correspondence. The first has been moved by Councillor Rybak. Committee of the Whole receive and refer to staff the correspondence from the Fonthill Lions Club to be included in the 2018 budget request for consideration by council. Any comments or questions to that item which was on our agenda? There being none, we call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next item is from the Legion. It's been moved by Councillor Rybak. Again, the Committee of the Whole receive and refer to staff the correspondence from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 613 to be included in the 2018 budget request for consideration by council. Discussion. There being none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Been moved by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole receive and refer to staff the correspondence from the North Pelham Youth Association to be included in the 2018 budget request for consideration by council. Questions, comments at this point? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now, we do have some items of correspondence, and these are those addendum items that I spoke about earlier at the start of the meeting. In addition, the correspondence from a few others. So it has been moved by Councillor Rybak. The Committee of the Whole receive and refer to staff the items of correspondence included on the October 23rd, 2017 addendum agenda as follows. P. Diamond regarding Sulphur Springs Drive. J. Adario regarding a bicycle route. L&T Mortimer regarding road repair, pool, and parkland. J. Abbott regarding lighting, shrubbery on Pickwick Place. And Pelham Minor Baseball Association regarding suggestions for capital items. Comments or question on any of those correspondence items? Councillor Rybak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick note now, but perhaps for further discussion as the meeting proceeds. I want to talk about Sulphur Springs Drive, its condition, and the need to do something quickly and at least temporarily, if not permanently, in the near future. But I think we're going to have in item 8 committee input on the 2018 budget, and I would like to include that in a slightly broader discussion. But I don't want to lose the opportunity to lend some degree of support to that letter with regard to Sulphur Springs Drive.
Okay, great, thank you for the notice.
Just want to be sure it's there.
I appreciate that, thank you. Anything further? Okay, there being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, thank you. And now we do move to item number 8, which is committee input regarding the 2018 budget. Since you started speaking about it, Councilor Ribbiak, I'll turn to you first.
Thank you. It's just a discussion, if we can have it, with regard to the condition of some of the roads that we have in the town. Those two in particular that are closed, Sulphur Springs and Poth. And I think both of those roads, perhaps Sulphur Springs more than Poth, but both, kind of demonstrate a need, I think, that the town has to be able to respond to issues like this with effective, safe, but perhaps fast and necessary ways of dealing with serious issues like this one. I know that in both the case of Sulphur Springs and Poth, the ultimate solution is going to be pretty extensive and pretty expensive. But in the meantime, the roads are closed. I think of Sulphur Springs in particular, which has two aspects to it which I think make it particularly critical. The first is that it's a road that provides local residents with access to their property. It's kind of lost as a result of the cave-in on the road. And the second is that road is used by people who are, I guess, using the road for recreational purposes, mechanical and otherwise, and who, regardless of the wisdom of it, who disregard the notices that the road is closed and they shouldn't use it. So what concerns me about that is that at some point or other, somebody's going to get hurt using that road, even though ostensibly it's been closed off and unavailable for traffic. It's being used for traffic, and it's in really tough shape. Rebuilding that road is going to be really expensive, but people have been building roads for a long time. Presumably we can think of a way of at least doing something that's effective but possibly temporary in order to keep that road open, to keep it useful. And that can buy us some time to think about what the ultimate solution is going to be and where the money is going to come from in order to deal with it. I mean, that's a solution that's going to require a really substantial amount of money, and I can understand us needing the time to get there. But in the meantime, we've got to do something. And the same is true with regard to Poth. It's closed. It's been closed for a significant period of time now, and it doesn't look like it's going to necessarily be open soon. One would think that we'd be able to think of a way of not coming up with a permanent solution perhaps immediately, but something effective and temporary that would work. It might include restrictions on loads. It might include reducing the number of lanes. It might include a number of things, but at least to get it open. So I would like to see in the upcoming budget maybe some costing, some planning on ways of dealing with those roads immediately, if we can. Immediately meaning, of course, with early in the budget year. So those items I would like to see some consideration for in the budget.
Okay.
And while we're on the subject of roads, there's just one other that I'd like to talk about, and that is a more general condition with regard to roads in Pelham, and that is the need for street lining, painting lines on roads, on all roads, at least within the urban limits of the town. There are some streets within the urban limits where it's still really dangerous to use, particularly for pedestrians. We need some degree of traffic calming. We know that lines are a cheap and reasonably effective way of reducing traffic. And so I'd like to see some consideration for that.
Okay.
Yeah, for speed control. I know that where we are in Fenwick, close to the urban limits, along Church and Foss in particular, traffic moves at a high clip. There's nothing on the road to indicate where the lanes are. We often hear about speed as a problem. It's a problem, but I suspect that elsewhere within the town, within the urban limits, again, there are probably streets that could benefit from the completion of the task of putting in lines so that people can govern themselves when they're driving. I mean, those are my points. If there are any questions,
Okay.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you very much. I did want to open it up if there was some comments about the first item, and then we can open it up to the second item. So the first item is sort of that resiliency to work on infrastructure, and then you named two specific items. So I'm going to turn over to Councillor Durley. Councillor?
That one I really don't have a comment on because we've
okay.
discussed that many times, and some of the restrictions are that the engineering stuff that we need to follow, and the risk that goes along if we don't do it. So, you know, that is, I think, a very important matter.
Thank you. Anyone on that first item then? Okay. So Councillor Durley, is it on the second item or is it on a new item?
No, the second item.
Okay,
and,
please proceed.
Just to build on what Councillor Rubiak has said, I think I get a call every second day about speed. And staff is definitely working on traffic calming things, but there certainly is a concern, and it's not isolated to any particular area, it's the whole town. So we've tried a chicane, we've tried speed humps, we've tried just about the poles that are in front of Glen Green School. There definitely needs to be something that's going to slow people down, and we're trying to get the national or the police to do a little more enforcement. That seems to be impossible. Although we pay big bucks, as the treasurer said, we don't seem to get a lot of traffic enforcement there. So we definitely need to throw some money at that, perhaps, to see what we can do to reduce speeds. And painting a line, I think, is the first line and the cheapest line. And I know on the street that I live, half of it is lined and the other half isn't. So I don't know whether they ran out of paint or just it was coffee break. But anyway, that's the comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others to lines or traffic calming? Just wanted, it's on my list of things to bring up, so I appreciate both of you bringing that up. And it'd be interesting to study the difference between the speeds in the lined area on Line Avenue. I don't know why you wouldn't have a line on Line Avenue, but anyways.
It comes from Merritt to halfway down, and then from Quaker to halfway up, there's nothing.
I wonder if the speed is greater in one section than the other because of line or less.
There's some pretty good speeds all along in there, even school buses.
Okay. So thank you for that. And I thought anecdotally we did see a reduction in speeds on Pancake West when a line was drawn up the middle and on the, more importantly, on the sides to kind of move that in. So that's something that staff can consider as you work on the 2018 budget. These kind of traffic calming measures or a budget allocation essentially is what you're suggesting, councillors, for those kind of traffic calming measures. Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor King.
With respect to the input on the budget, safety, of course, whether it includes speeding or whatever the case is, needs to have some dollars thrown towards it. But I think that we need to take a good hard look at the dollars that will be put towards parks and recreation. We've heard from Ms. Wells this evening with respect to sports, and we hear over and over again comments from the Active Transportation Committee because of walking trails, cycling trails, and the safety associated with that. So I think that we do need to take a look at the money for improving trails, et cetera. Excuse me. And my third item would have been with respect to customer service. I think we need to look at how we can best utilize the public service request system. So those are my three areas: Parks, Rec, customer service, and safety.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any counselors to those items that Councillor King has raised? Some of those are on my list as well in terms of, you talked about safety, I think the trails and the trail system. And again, we also heard a presentation from a member of the public about enhancing a park, so thank you. Okay, thanks. Others? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. I took a sort of global view of the budget this year and where we are and the condition we'd like to, as a council, leave the town in at the end of our term. And I view this as a year of consolidation. We have experienced over the last number of years unprecedented growth. We have undertaken extremely significant and impactful projects for our community, not the least of which is bringing East Vaughan Hill on stream, bringing the community center on stream, beginning the process of East Fenwick, beginning the process in looking at the arena lands and how we might dispose of them in a way which is complementary to the area in which we find it. So I guess from my point of view, when we develop the budget going forward for 2018, there are a number of things that we need to consider. I think we need to have, the main impetus should be to finish what we've started. Let's bring the community center to completion and on stream and have it functioning as we've all envisioned when we began. And all of the factors that come into that equation, I'm not going to enumerate them. We need to complete the East Fenwick plan and have it at a position where the developers that have been invested in those lands for, some of them well exceeding 10 or 12 years and beyond that. So we need to get our work done and spend some money in completing that process, which is reasonably well along the way and well within the capabilities of this council and our staff to complete in 2018. Similarly, I think the arena lands are something that needs to be completed. We have a vision now that our planning partners are working with us to develop and to bring back to the community. Some of which we've heard about tonight. The splash pad was incorporated in at least one of the iterations that we had there. So I think it's incumbent on us to spend whatever time and energy and money is necessary to complete that process. If it is to undertake the preliminary studies, such as the archaeological, et cetera, on that land, if they are necessary, such that we can go forward with the parkland, but also the development can move forward in an expeditious fashion. Lastly, and my colleagues have spoken to some of the issues, we have undertaken and began the process in numerous infrastructure projects, but have not yet been able to complete them. And again, I'm not going to list them. I think we all are aware of them and have them in our previous budgets, and we need to move those forward because they dovetail into the plans, the overall picture of our community that we envisioned back 7 or 8 years ago and have moved forward with. And lastly, and I think most importantly, well, we have experienced unprecedented growth, and we know that that will bring funds forward going forward. We need to, A, develop a strong reserve policy, and we need to incorporate that reserve policy into our budgeting process. Because reserves, strong reserves, speak to sustainability. It's one thing to have a growth mentality. It's quite another thing to have a growth mentality with a sustainability built in. And that's where reserves come into play. So I think you've heard me harp on this before, Mr. Mayor, and I feel very strongly on that. So I would hope that there'll be an element within our budgeting process that will speak to the reserve, replenishing the reserves and developing a sustainable mentality as we go forward. And that's enhanced by having a strong reserve policy. So those are the sort of the global picture that I see and will be looking for within the various elements of the budget as they come forward. So that's my thoughts on it, Mr. Mayor. And I have a couple of small issues, but that's the big issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Gurley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the issues that came through, I think, loud and clear in our strategic planning session was communication. And I think we definitely have to throw some money at a effective, positive communication plan that brings things forward so that things can't be twisted the way they have been twisted in the past, and we certainly need to address this. So definitely we need to put some priority on the way we communicate, and communication goes both ways. It's what we say and it's what people hear as well. So we have to make sure that people are understanding just what's being said. So I think that is a very important issue, and I believe staff is working on it with interdepartmental teams to come up with an answer for that. But certainly I think that is something that we really need to put some emphasis on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? A couple of things, and I appreciate on my list some of the items that colleagues have brought up, and I've checked them off, so I appreciate you raising them. Thank you so much. And I like, Councillor Kersey, how you've put the, finishing what we've started. We've started a lot of things. Let's finish them. Let's do them right. Let's, we heard a couple presentations this evening. You started this. Let's finish these particular items, and as well with the investments and the reserve policy, etc. One thing I thought you were going to say, Councillor Kersey, when you said we've experienced a tremendous amount of growth, was the concept that we had with the neighborhood Love Your Hood program.
Yes.
Which I know you attended, Councillor Durley and I attended one. There were others. It seemed to me like that was a wonderful program.
Absolutely.
Where the public could say, we'd like to do an event in our neighborhood. There is a tent that you can use from the town. We'll close the street off for you. There's some kind of a checklist of things that you can do and who to invite and all that other stuff. I think that could be expanded even further, and I would suggest that from what I heard from those that did the Love Your Hood program, they want to do it again next year, and there are a number through the town that are done that may not be kind of under that radar. So yeah, Loving Your Hood is about getting to know your neighbor. Mm-hmm. It's about our small town feel, which we've concentrated so much on when it comes to festivals and the supper market and those kind of things, even the Green Street Challenge. Mm-hmm. But that's, I think, an important piece to try to bring the community together. I think an interesting piece, it's not necessarily on the strategic plan, Councillor Kersey, that you, as you spoke about it, but I'd like to at least know that we somehow do get to plan the Ridgeville hamlet. So the province has given us that planning consideration and removed it from the green belt. And but that now has to be planned, what that area is. That will take some time, but I think it's one item that could be started or at least budgeted to be included in, if not next year, future years. An interesting one, and we saw it on the treasurer's presentation. I'm trying to find the slide here. She did send it around, or the clerk sent it around. Street lighting. And it was talked about by Mr. Abbott, LED streetlights, and I know there's some money in the budget. Some communities, many in Niagara, have converted their streetlights over to LED, and they say, I don't know what the numbers show, but they say that there's a significant cost savings over a period of time, a payoff period, and perhaps that's something that we can consider. It may be time for us to do that. One that we had last year, I look back in last year's notes from the presentations we had from the public, and we didn't quite get to, is trees. Mr. Abbott suggested what he suggested last year as well. I think when Dr. Turple would make a presentation to council and saying his idea was somehow that residents could be involved in trees, volunteering, so that if there's trees planted in a neighborhood, much like Mr. Abbott suggested, that that neighborhood would kind of care for it in some way. And I know you just said that. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, sir. And that could be something that we could consider, even increasing the number of trees. A lot of folks have said, and we have a plan there for along Canberra Road, for instance, between Fawn Hill and Ridgeville, specifically on the hill was one area, etc. So there may be an investment in trees that, again, could pay dividends long into the future. The best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is today, right? So we may want to consider increasing the trees. But coming with that is operating dollars to care for those. There is an option that a local arborist did bring forward to my attention, which is some municipalities are purchasing the trees under capital, and then with that is an upkeep for the first few years, so that the tree is essentially guaranteed to take root and to grow. So that's something that perhaps we can look at. No doubt, council's going to be, so I won't go into any detail here, but council's going to be discussing as we are opening the new community center. We're going to be discussing that, what that looks like, and also there will be likely an increase in staff levels. May not be an increase in cost, because those costs are to be recouped from revenues, but there will be a change in staff levels. So I know that we'll happen to have that discussion as we move forward. Those are my kind of higher, some of them low level, but some of them higher level, based on the some of the items that colleagues have brought up, but other items as well, something to look at. I think finally the final thing is that capital is always a challenge, and so maintenance of existing capital. We heard it a couple of times tonight, and making sure that there's enough dollars. We continue to increase those capital allocations. Last year, I think it was 1.8% that we put into capital within the tax levels, but there's always going to be that call for additional capital and investment into capital, so that what we have can be maintained, and something we spoke about. So those are the items that I'd like to kind of add to the mix that we consider as we work our way through the 2018 budget and beyond. I'm going to go back to council to see if there's anything else that colleagues would like to discuss. Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In our next regular meeting, I think we will have on the agenda the third quarter report from the airport, and it will forecast a capital need for, I think, $173,000 for runway repairs at the airport. course, our share is perhaps a third of that, the rest being shared by the other three stakeholder municipalities. So that will be coming, and we can discuss it obviously in more detail when it gets here.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kersey, you're going to go into the same with
No,
the
it's a-
library as our library rep. Councillor
I
Ribbiak's our.
think the library will be coming forward with
Okay.
their requests.
Okay.
Mine was a little bit more mundane of a question. Did we not get any applications for the permissive grant, or are we considering the Fawn Hill Lions and the Legion request as part of the permissive grant versus the monies that we had aside that council could decide of outside the scope of the permissive grant?
Right. Madam Treasurer, are you able to answer that
I'm going to defer to
question?
the
Or
Deputy
our
Treasurer.
deputy, Ms.
Yes.
Tunakaitis?
It's more familiar.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is under the current municipal grant policy, there are 2 types of applications, and they're all for in-kind and waiver of fees. So these requests that came tonight, which are for cash donations, would have to be outside of that grant policy, so they're a separate consideration of council.
Okay, thank you.
So within the permissive grant structure, did we not allocate a certain block of money for this type of request? And will there be similar consideration in our budget this year, or?
Not sure the Treasury staff are able to answer that right now, Ms. Tunakaitis, so you,
I'll wait and see.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, this is, we would have to get back to you on that.
Perfect, that's fine.
okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further? Okay, thank you very much, committee members, for your input. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for sticking around and for your input. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Durley that this special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next special committee meeting scheduled for Monday, October 30th, 2017. When that meeting, Ms. Van Ravensway, we're talking about playgrounds, not playgrounds, parks, and the types of parks. So just to build on what Councillor King said. So you're going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. What's that called, Vicki?